All right, we're live.
Hi, everybody. We're going to get started in just a minute.
All right, let's get started.
All right, great. So I'm Helen. I'm an attorney at Waypoint Immigration, and I specialize in EB-2 NIW applications. So today we're going to talk about the proposed endeavor, which I think is very much the foundation of the entire application. But the NIW is the National Interest Waiver. It's a second preference employment-based visa. Sorry, not a visa. It's a green card application. So this does not grant you any sort of a status. It doesn't grant you any work authorization. It doesn't do anything until you actually get your green card. So it can be like a long-term planning device. For most countries around the world, it's probably like a 3 to 5 year wait once your application is approved before you get the green card. If you're from other countries like China and especially India, your wait time is infinitely longer than that, unfortunately, due to the backlog. But just want to be clear, this doesn't give you any sort of status to come to America or stay in America or anything like that. You would have to be here on another status. A lot of people are on H-1B or maybe an F1 student visa, obviously other options as well. So you would have to just maintain your status until your priority date became current. So the proposed endeavor is the foundation of the entire application. So when I'm doing an application, it's one of the first things I'm writing about. I'm explaining to the officer, I'm telling them short-term goals, long-term goals, how will you actually implement these things, maybe your methods, your techniques and technologies that you'll use to help pursue whatever your proposed endeavor is. So proposed endeavor is just a fancy way of saying like what your future plan is to impact America. So the proposed endeavor is then kind of explained further in the context of the 3 different prongs. So the first prong, substantial merit, national importance, we would be talking about how your proposed endeavor aligns with different goals of the government, different things the government's trying to achieve and advance, and how your work is nationally impactful beyond just your company. And the second one, that you are well positioned to do your proposed endeavor. So that's showing everything that you've already accomplished. So that's past looking. That's looking at your education, your experience, whatever kind of work product and documentation you have, any industry contributions, publications, conference proceedings, speaking engagements, judge roles, panels, committees, memberships. There's a whole slew of things that you show that you are capable of doing this proposed endeavor that you've already laid out. Then the third prong, that it's on balance that you are not going to be harming the American workforce, and therefore, through different reasons are able to bypass PERM and the labor certification process. And this is how we show things like what makes you unique, so that cannot be easily replicated on like a labor certification. Why is your proposed endeavor urgent? Why does this have to be done now? Why can't we just take the normal time of the PERM process? So, if you have any sort of like public health kind of a benefit, obviously we want to help people's lives. The more we can save earlier, the better, sort of a thing, for an example. Explaining about how you've already benefited America, or you can benefit America. Why we do kind of talk about a labor shortage, but that is less and less proving the third prong, but it's more like how, even if you were to come, you wouldn't be hurting the American workforce because, there's just not enough workers to help, progress in whatever your area is, like a lot of tech and things like that. Maybe your proposed endeavor or something related is on the critical and emerging technologies list. We've used that before. And just something, if it does say anything in like a federal government record that, this is urgent, this is top priority, this, America really wants to further this now, or otherwise we'll fall behind with technology or advancement or infrastructure, whatever the case is. So that's the third prong, but you can see how you talk about your proposed endeavor in all of those prongs. So everything that you talk about has to prove that you're able to do your proposed endeavor is important, it's impactful. Everything points back to that proposed endeavor, which is why I say that's why it's the foundation of this entire application. So a proposed endeavor should be future focused. So we are past looking under that second prong to show that you are well positioned, because that's when we talk about everything that, everything that's relevant. We may not talk about every single item, but, whatever is strong to help prove your case. That's maybe a topic for another webinar, but for the proposed endeavor purpose, it is future focused. So what can you do in the future? How will that be impactful? Ultimately, why does America care? Like, why is this something important that America wants to advance or help kind of bring someone like you in to do this specific task? And, this is not an analysis of your job title. It is not an analysis of your field. So, if you just say, oh, I'm going to do cybersecurity. Okay, cybersecurity is important, but we're not analyzing if cybersecurity is important. We're analyzing if you within cybersecurity can do something that is helpful to help benefit America. So it's very specific to you. So I think that's, talking about mistakes to avoid. I think that's the first mistake to avoid by saying, just talking about your field in and of itself. It is not an analysis of your field. This is an analysis of you. What's your plan? How will you help with cybersecurity? What will you implement? What is maybe scalable that can go beyond just your company? What can be implemented across the board? What are you doing to kind of help, make that whole thing safer for people to use, online, databases or whatever it is. Like maybe you're doing something with healthcare records to help safeguard, hospitals and doctors and things like that from hackers, from gaining, people's documentation through their health records. Whatever it is, you have to kind of show what you will do. So with that instance, you'd want to know, okay, well, if you're going to help cybersecurity, that's like a good start, but that's definitely not the end point. So obviously, they're going to want to know, where is your impact going to land? So that's something that I've talked a lot about in consultations lately, where they're just saying, oh, I'm going to help advance cybersecurity to safeguard, the documents from hackers and, improve systems or whatever it is. And, maybe they've done it in finance, maybe they've done it in healthcare, maybe they're not sure where they want to do it. But if I'm the officer and you're telling me you're going to help advance cybersecurity, I'm going to want to know, where is that impact landing? Is that helping the healthcare aspect? Is that going to land in the finance sector? Where is your impact going to land? So that also can be for a lot of people in AI, because AI, machine learning, data scientists, data analysts, that can be used across the board in so many different areas. And, a lot of people do have varied experience, and that's fine. But they want to know, if you're just going to say, I'm going to advance AI, they want to know, where is that going to land? Is it helping advance AI in retail? Are you working for Amazon? Is it helping to advance some sort of bank or finance area? Are you helping with supply chain and like keeping things, better for domestic supply chains? They want to know, what does your impact look like? So, it can't just be theoretical. I feel like they want to know, where will this impact land? And if you have some sort of a niche, I always think that that is a little bit better, because then you can kind of figure out that landing point a little bit easier. We have had success with people in AI that are, kind of in varied, backgrounds, and how they might have done something with, finance, and they've done something with retail, and now they're not really sure where they're going to land. But, I think if you're able to at least address the question in a meaningful way and kind of explain how it could be impactful, and it could be maybe your impact could land in 2 or 3 areas, but 2 or 3 areas is better than not telling them anything. So if you have experience, then it could be applied in multiple spots. I think maybe just describing what that would look like in a couple of different sectors would be helpful, versus just, it's too broad. You're not really sure where it's going to land. So another thing is that these proposed endeavors are not just to continue working in whatever job that you're currently in. That's not a proposed endeavor. Your proposed endeavor is whatever the work is that you are doing. Like, what benefits does it have? How is it far reaching? How does it impact America more than just your company? So, I've already described things, of course, but, if you're going to say, oh, my proposed endeavor is to keep doing cybersecurity in the banking sector, that's not a proposed endeavor. They want to know, my proposed endeavor is to help advance, something within cybersecurity to benefit America, to help America safeguard its, information, or it's something like that. So it should be it's not just describing your job title. It's not just tying it to your current job or your company or anything like that. So it extends beyond any of those things. So if someone says, I'm going to continue being software engineer 3 or whatever it is, they're going to say in the RFE that I'm assuming you would be getting, it's too tied to the job. There is no broader implications. There is no national impact, blah, blah, blah. And this is also what we're seeing in RFEs, that even though we are not tying proposed endeavors to jobs or job titles, because we're very aware of that. That is not at all how I describe it in anything that we, have with our clients. But USCIS is definitely making assumptions here. I've seen many RFEs where they're saying, oh, well, your proposed endeavor is to be software engineer 3, and that's not a proposed endeavor. Therefore, there are no national or global implications, and you don't have any national importance. So it's very tricky on how to describe these things, because, like I said, we're describing things already with this in mind, and still USCIS has jumped to the gun and made assumptions in some of these RFEs that we have seen. So, it's very tricky. And of course, if the officer would maybe read it a little bit more critically and could see what we're describing, but it's very much, how you present it really does make a difference, because you don't want to have the officer think at all that you're just going to continue your job, that is tied to your employer or anything. So even though you may not have meant that in how you're describing it, that could be how it's taken. And even if it's written from a lawyer's experience, sometimes, there's things that we can't, we do as much as we can to obviously avoid these scenarios. And in the RFE, we absolutely fight back and describe how the officer interpreted it wrong. This is not the proposed endeavor as outlined. And, we fight back and give more details to that. And we have had success with that, with getting RFEs approved and stuff. But that's definitely something to be hyper aware of. So I would say, some of the biggest problems are that people are just tying it to their job, and then also just kind of making it sound like a resume, describing what they've done and things that they've accomplished. The proposed endeavor is future focused, and the entire application sometimes feels like people are trying to just describe their resume. this is not at all about your resume. I mean, your resume could be included as, and I also like using resumes myself because it's kind of like a little bit of a cheat sheet outline as to what you've done. But this is not just simply explaining your resume. Depending upon what section and what prong we're talking about, like if it's well positioned, say maybe you did do a conference presentation somewhere and you're talking about the prestige, like, okay, well, that's good. I need to know what that was. But my question is still, how does that help you in the future? How does that help show the officer you're capable of continuing to be impactful and progressing towards your proposed endeavor? I feel like you're only telling half the story if you're only describing your activities. The other half of the story is making the point as to whatever prong you're trying to prove. So, that's not proposed endeavor per se, but I think that a lot of people confuse the proposed endeavor with the second prong. And the second prong, like I said, is very past oriented, talking about, what you have done, what you can do. Versus what you can do, which is the proposed endeavor, future focused and things like that. Sometimes also they don't really describe how you can do this proposed endeavor. So that's why I'm saying they want to know, like, what methods will you use? What techniques or technologies can you implement and leverage? What's your short-term goal? What does the long-term goal look like? So the proposed endeavor is very important, and they want to know, not only where will your impact land, but how do you plan to actually do these things? Because everyone could say like, oh, I'm going to cure cancer. Okay, well, that sounds great. And of course, everyone wants to cure cancer, but, I need something tangible because otherwise it's just kind of like something floating around in the sky that you can't quite grab because you're not really sure what that means. So giving them tangible things that you can talk about is super helpful. One more thing I'm going to add in quick before I go to questions is that if you're doing anything that involves a business, maybe your proposed endeavor is tied to starting a business. And if it's in the short term, like it's something you want to do right away, then you're going to have to show several other things. You're going to have to show a business plan. You're going to show you have potential customers or clients. You have financial backing. You have the business knowledge and skills to actually do the business. And you have to show that the business work in and of itself is also nationally important. So it's not enough just to say, oh, well, I'll be contributing to the economy because I have a business. Like, that's fine. And you do want to mention that. But the business in and of itself should be doing work that is nationally important. So if your business is to open a restaurant, the restaurant will contribute to your local economy and things like that. But the work of the business in and of itself is not nationally important. That's not impactful to the country unless you're setting some sort of new standard for like maybe a health code or something. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like how to leverage that for an NIW, but like your stereotypical restaurant is not doing any of those things that would be considered nationally important, and it wouldn't work for this kind of an application. That would be maybe more of a E2 business or, something else like that if you're looking to do that. But if you are doing a business, you need to show all of these concrete steps. And if it is like a long-term plan, maybe like 10 plus years, maybe you need to get more industry experience or something before you would consider doing a business, then I would just make it a long-term goal, because at that point, you're not ready to do any of those tangible steps, and it's not really something that is within a reasonable grasp for your application. So if you say, oh, maybe down the line after X amount of years of experience, and then at some point you'd have to gain business knowledge too, or align yourself with a business partner, because they very much want to know, not only do you have whatever the technical skills are needed for the business, but you have to have the business knowledge and experience also. So it's kind of like, it's kind of opening up a can of worms in a way, if it's not something that you are actually looking to do. I have heard of people saying, oh, I'm going to just say I'm going to start a business because that makes it nationally important and therefore I can get approved. Like, oh, no. It's not. It's definitely not that easy. There's a lot more to prove. So, the point is that if it is genuinely your goal, absolutely there are things that we can show to include, and it can be impactful and it can certainly be successful. There's just, extra items that we would have to include in your application. And, maybe a couple additional arguments, but definitely something that would align with the NIW, you know, given if those things are kind of, you know, done already. But I will open it up to some questions now. So if you have any, put it in the comments. And if you're watching it recorded, you know, you can still put it in the comments or DM me and I can get back to you.
So I don't see any questions in the comments.
Oh, okay. I know some weeks there's so many we
Yeah.
don't have enough time. So I'll give people like, you know, if they want to add it in a moment or two. Otherwise, you know, I would say, you know, you just with proposed endeavors, they really are the foundation of everything and they definitely need some thought put into them. So, you know, when people talk to me in consultations, I always, that's the first thing that I try to establish with the person is, well, what kind of projects are you working on right now? What does that mean? And, you know, what kind of results have you had? How does that align with your other previous experiences? How does that align with your job? I mean, your degree. You know, trying to understand the work that's being done is how I then help figure out what that proposed endeavor is. And trying to not just only focus on the job that you currently have, but taking into account past jobs that you've had. And then something that other people may not think of is, well, what's your next job going to be? You know, what is the next plan for you? Are you going to, do you plan on staying where you're at? You know, in an ideal world, what does that look like for you? Do you want to industry hop and like go to a different industry? Do you want to go from research to industry? Do you want to like, what is your next step? Or if you're in school, what kind of jobs will you be aiming for after school? So, you know, it's a little bit about past, present, and future. Oh,
Who's catching the end of this? And thanks for the stream. Okay, we have questions. Have you handled EB-2 NIW cases where a senior dev moves to full-time content creation, YouTube, Medium, etc., and use their reach and biotech tools education to support the case?
Well, I think I would definitely need a lot more details as to what that actually means for you. So if you want, on our website, we have, you know, of course you can make a consultation because I would definitely need to have more information. But you can go to waypointimmigration.org. At the top, you'll see appointments and there's an EB-2 NIW. And we also do free assessments also. So if you wanted to do an EB-1A assessment or an EB-2 NIW assessment, those are all available on our website.
How much experience does really make impact if applying with the bachelor's degree in computer science about 5 years?
Well, to me, it doesn't make a difference how long you've been doing anything because you could be impactful and still even be a student. So it depends on what have you done that is impactful. You know, there is no like, oh, this person has 5 years experience, 10 years experience. Okay, they've now reached the threshold. You may never reach the threshold even with 20 plus years experience. It's looking for how are you impacting more than just your company? Like, what are you doing that is helping to set standards or raise the standards? What are you doing that's scalable across the industry? What are you doing that is maybe creating the wheels of innovation where, you know, you're kind of planting a little seed of your own knowledge and then that becomes, you know, a snowballed effect throughout the industry. And, you know, that's kind of like more of a traditional publication citation kind of an idea. But however you're able to implement your specialized knowledge to other specialists in the field, that's really what we're looking at. Like, how are you doing something that is creating efficiency for more than just your company? How is what you are doing scalable?
Is it smart to use LLMs like ChatGPT or Gemini to draft the EB-2 NIW case ourselves first, then hire a lawyer to review and polish it?
I would say, oh, no, no, no. So ChatGPT gets a lot of things wrong. So, I mean, I use ChatGPT myself to help maybe like create something that's technical and have it be written out in a non-technical way. Because, you know, the officers obviously aren't experts in whatever the tech is. And honestly, you know, as an attorney, that's not my background either. So to try to understand the context of what you do, you know, I can see value in using like ChatGPT and things like that. But as far as like the level of detail and the way that you have to apply everything, ChatGPT is going to give you such a basic response that you're almost certain to get an R fee if that's the only thing that you do. So like our firm, for example, we don't even do any case reviews. So, you know, if you create your own application and send it to us, we wouldn't take it. So we're only full service. I mean, there might be other firms or businesses out there that would maybe do a review, but we wouldn't be one of them. We're full service. So we would help strategize, get all of your documents, do your reference letters, forms, the entire thing, all the research, everything from soup to nuts, basically.
If it's in software automation testing.
Okay, I'm still not sure what that means, but you know, like I said, someone with 1 year experience or 20 years experience, that's not what the threshold is to see if it's impactful. They want to know how is what you are doing impacting more than your company, and a job title is not going to tell me that.
Self-employed dev makes open source tools, provide tech as their guidance on how many users or what impact metrics are needed for EB-2 NIW.
Yeah, so in that case, you know, I know a lot of people have like GitHub profiles, so you can kind of show your GitHub profile, maybe see how many people have interacted with it. I'm not exactly sure of all the details of GitHub, but anything that you can show that other people have kind of referenced your work or downloaded your work, commented on your work, you know, whatever kind of broader impact it may have had, that is what is useful. You know, you could even consider like getting a reference letter from someone that, you know, maybe use something that you did on GitHub, or at least could kind of give some context to the work you have on GitHub as to how it is helpful, how it is, you know, making a difference, and it is impactful, and it is kind of helping to spur the field forward.
All right, I don't see any other questions.
Okay, well, we can end 2 minutes early. So if anyone has any questions, you know, feel free to message me or make a comment and I can reply back.
Great.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Sarah.